Chief Seattle once said that humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together. All things connect. I can only think that Chief Seattle was referring to the fact that our actions not only affect the entity in which that they're acting against, but that our actions affect everything around us. That is why I think it is important to discuss animal cruelty and hopefully gather support to help protect all of the many creatures that have been placed on this planet, to protect them from harm and to prevent the unnecessary suffering of innocent animals. It is important to understand that cruelty to animals is not only a crime against them, but a crime against humanity. First, however, if we are to stop the widespread abuse of animals, we must understand what animal cruelty is and where it comes from. And to know that it isn't something new, that it isn't a fad, that some activists didn't just decide to start this, but that it is actually rooted in our history, even as far back as the beginning of time. But what is animal cruelty, and where did the thought that animals have rights come from? Animal rights is the idea that all non-human animals are entitled to the possession of their own lives. It is the idea that they are entitled to the one basic instinct that is afforded to us humans, and that is the ability to have the right to not to suffer. However, according to some critics, animals are unable to enter into a social contract, and therefore they aren't entitled to possess their own rights. So does that mean, since they can't vocalize their wants and to share with us their interests, that it's okay to harm them and make them suffer? I don't think so. According to Roger Scruton, only humans have duties, and therefore only humans have rights. There are many people that believe that as humans, we are above the animals and at the top of the food chain. So therefore, their suffering, it isn't important to us. Even God himself gave Adam dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over all the creeping, and all over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. I'm no scholarly student of the Bible, but I'm sure that his dominion over the animals was given to him so that Adam could survive, he could live, not to make the animals suffer for pleasure or for cruelty. It is a given fact that we as humans require protein to live, and from the very beginning we were given the ability to hunt and to cook the meat for our survival. But for some, and I will point this out later, that it is taken to a cruel level. The idea of animal cruelty and animal rights has been in the books for hundreds of years and goes back as far as 580 BCE. It was then that Pythagoras urged the respect for animals, believing that human and non-human souls were reincarnated from human to animal and vice versa. Theophrastus, who was a student of Aristotle in 370 BCE, argued that animals had reason and was opposed to eating meat on the grounds that it robbed them of life and was therefore unjust. In 1635 Ireland, a law was passed that prohibited the pulling wool off sheep and attaching plows to horses' tails, referring to the cruelty used to beasts. Laws, legislations, debates, arguments, and the ever-growing number of activists has only put a dent into the mounting number of cases of animal cruelty. Just so we understand, let me put a number out there for you. But remember, these are just numbers, and they're only numbers of cases of animal cruelty that were reported in the media in 2007. 1,880 cases were reported in 1 year's time. Of those 1,880 cases, 64.5% were dogs, 18% cats, and 25% other animals. To some, 1,880 cases, that doesn't seem like a lot, but remember, those are just the numbers that were reported to the media, and many are left unreported, so the number is more likely much, much higher. But really, would just giving you statistics or numbers make you change your mind about animal cruelty? Well, let's talk about Jack. Jack was a 1-year-old German Shepherd puppy. His owners had sentenced Jack to a slow and painful death. He was locked in a crate with no food and no water. He was basically left to suffer and to starve to death, even in his own excrement. Or Pippa. Pippa was a beautiful black lab who was found with a hair elastic around her neck. The elastic had been on Pippa's neck so long that it had embedded into her skin and caused infectious wounds and large open sores. Had she not been found, the vets confirmed that she was actually only days away from death. And then there's Molly. Molly actually lives with me. She was a rescue dog that was brought to the local animal shelter, unable to use her back leg. It was determined that Molly had been kicked so hard that it broke her pelvic bone. She's had to endure a serious form of surgery to fuse her leg into the pelvic bone so that hopefully one day she would be able to walk again. With help and love, Molly has done that. Imagine her fate had we not stepped in. But animal cruelty doesn't just happen to those who can't afford the care and upkeep of animals, the poor and the unfortunate. Animal cruelty happens in all walks of life. A story that came out a few years ago was one that involved a well-known athlete, someone who had the money to feed and protect the animals, but he chose a different path. Michael Vick was a prominent NFL football player, but on the side, he owned and operated a dog breeding kennel called Bad News Kennels. It was determined that he bred and used the pit bulls he raised to operate a dog fighting ring with purses as high as $26,000. In his indictment, the charges stated, and I quote, "Vick executed approximately 8 dogs that did not perform well in testing sessions by various methods including hanging, drowning, and slamming at least one dog's body to the ground." This was a man who could have used his notoriety, his stature, his physical appearance to protect animals, but instead he decided to harm and kill innocent dogs. Animal cruelty, though, isn't just towards domesticated animals. In a highly publicized case in 2010, a dairy farmer by the name of Billy Joe Gregg Jr. was caught on tape maliciously abusing cows and calves. During a 4-week investigation, Gregg was documented to have violently punched young calves in the face, body slamming them to the ground, and pulling and throwing them by the ears, routinely using pitchforks to stab cows in the face, legs, and stomach, kicking downed cows, those too injured to stand, in the face and neck. And this abuse was actually encouraged by the dairy farm's owner. Maliciously beating restrained cows in the face with crowbars, some attacks involving over 40 blows to the head. Twisting cows' tails until their bones snapped. Punching cows in their udders. And he was also caught bragging about stabbing, dragging, shooting, breaking bones, and beating cows and calves to death. As awful as we may think that this is, federal laws do not provide protection for farmed animals during their lives on the farm. In Ohio, where this occurred, this kind of treatment is merely classified as a misdemeanor. Ohio has some of the weakest state laws, ranking 43rd out of 50. And as a matter of fact, it is actually a crime in the states of Indiana, Arkansas, and Pennsylvania to make videos of agricultural operations. And in California, Nebraska, and Tennessee, a bill is pending that states that anyone who has videotaped any animal cruelty turn the evidence over within 24 to 48 hours. The deplorable conditions uncovered at Conklin dairy farms further highlight the reality that animal agriculture cannot be trusted to self-regulate and that meaningful federal and state law must be implemented and strengthened to prevent egregious cruelty to farmed animals. In the case of Gregg, the dairy farmer, it was determined that his cruelty towards the animals was a pathological disorder, that he actually derived pleasure from harming these creatures. This type of behavior is dangerous not only to the animals, but to the society as well. In 1987, physical cruelty to animals was added to the list of symptoms for the diagnosis of CD, conduct disorder, in the American Psychiatric Association's edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It has been suggested that 25% of the children diagnosed with CD exhibited animal cruelty, and that in most cases, animal cruelty may be the earliest detectable symptom of CD. Case in point, An 11-year-old girl in the UK strangled to death 2 children, aged 3 and 4. It was proven that this young girl had a history of strangling cats and pigeons, but no one paid attention to the warning signs. Imagine if we had. Maybe these 2 children could possibly be alive today. In recent years, the Chicago Police Department conducted a study that revealed a startling propensity for offenders charged with crimes against animals to commit other violent crimes towards humans. Of the individuals arrested for crimes against animals, 65% had been arrested for battery against another person. Another statistic to consider, of 36 convicted multiple murderers, when asked if they had committed acts of animal torture, a startling 46%, nearly half of them, admitted that in fact they had committed acts of animal cruelty. But what touches home the most with the recent school shootings, such as the one at Sandy Hook, is the tie between animal cruelty and those tragic events. Between the years of 1997 and 2001 across the country, there were 7 school shootings. All of the shootings involved boys who had previously committed acts of animal cruelty. We have to ask ourselves, what if we had caught these acts of animal cruelty first and punished them? Maybe these shootings wouldn't have happened. And let's not forget about domestic violence, a problem that we are not short of, whether it's against children or women. In a gold standard study conducted in 11 metro cities, researchers have found that 71 to 83% of women who entered domestic violence shelters reported that their partners also abused or killed the family pet. Animal cruelty may be to some a victimless crime. What harm does it do to society that Pippa was strangled with a hair elastic, or Molly kicked till her pelvis was broken, or those cattle were poked and stabbed with pitchforks or beaten by some unknown man? Maybe the man who strangled Pippa strangles his daughter later, or the person who kicked Molly kicks a pregnant woman till she miscarries, or maybe the man who tortured cattle goes in and kills 25 children while they're at school. It's not victimless. The animals suffer, and if not stopped, humanity suffers. A crime or abuse against one strand of the web of life is abuse or a crime against us all. Chief Seattle said, whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. I hope that my speech today makes you think the next time we see an act of cruelty towards an animal, we stand up and protect them, because those acts of cruelty to animals leads to acts of cruelty to humanity. Thank you.